Hey everybody, before I get started, I just want to mention a couple of ways that you can engage with me on a more personal level. I have a few avenues set up and I keep focusing on one, and I figured why don't I make a short little video talking about all of them real quick before we get into these episodes. So first thing, Patreon. There's a link in the episode description, in every episode description, to the Patreon, as well as a video on the feed called Major Announcement that has all the details of what each tier offers and how much they cost. I implore you to check that out. I offer a lot of cool shit for my patrons. Second thing, the Discord channel. There's also a Discord link in the episode description and in every episode description. I have multiple channels set up there for each show that I'm covering, and it's a great way to just engage with me. I have a channel set up for MMA talk as well. I'm a big MMA fan, so if you're an MMA fan, you can check that out as well. There's a link to the Discord in the episode description. And then lastly, the Facebook and Twitter. Social media. Follow me on there. I post news on there. When I say news, I mean like, hey, I'm stopping covering this show. Hey, I'm starting covering this show. Let me know what you think about this. I do live watches of things on Facebook where like I'll check in and say I'm watching so-and-so show, and then I'll like live comment while I'm watching it, and that'll be cool if maybe you watch that show too and you want to watch along with me, or you're watching it later and you will see my thoughts, which are usually pretty entertaining because I'm usually pretty high when I'm writing them. So check out all those links in each episode description, and let's talk about this episode. Peace.
One mic, one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. One mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. One mic. One mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here to talk about Season 4, Episode 9 of HBO's Succession, the penultimate episode of the entire series, entitled Church and State. I'm sure you all are aware of the political dynamic in this country regarding the separation of church and state, which essentially exists to keep a barrier between religion and politics. The episode title does well to leave off the word separation from that commonly used phrase, as church and state combine very much when political wheelings and dealings take place at and surrounding Logan's funeral in this episode. So simply put, I think this is another all-time great Succession episode. The kids were probably most themselves that we've ever seen them be as it pertains to both their actions and their words. The real world tie-ins were unsettling. They set up clear stakes and expectations for the finale that I'm sure they'll subvert magnificently. Just a lot of great stuff going on here. So let's talk about this episode. I'll close with giving a prediction for the finale just for shits and giggles. But like I said, I fully expect them to deliver something that is far greater than my simple ass mind can imagine. So there's a few things going on simultaneously in this episode, and that's kind of how I want to structure this review slash discussion. I'm going to start with the funeral. Then I want to talk a little bit about the political slash business stuff that takes place. And then I'm going to close with the social unrest subplot, and then actually close with my thoughts like I normally do. So starting off with the funeral, early in the episode, as a matter of fact, I believe it's the first scene, we see Roman practicing his speech for the funeral, and man, does he look confident. The entire opening to this episode, maybe the whole first half of the episode, is Roman being peak Roman. He won, because he won. He did it, right? He helped make Mencken president. Menken's going to stop the deal. Kendall and him are going to run ATN like the bosses they are. He did everything that he set out to do. He won. Of course he's going to be cocky. Of course he's going to be arrogant. Of course he's going to be on full Roman while he's practicing this speech. You know, he's got all the bravado of someone who has checked off every item on his accomplishments list. Like, there's some seriousness in this speech, but there's a lot of Roman-esque jokes, and I feel like that's not things that he was going to include in the speech, but just the show's way of showing us just how confident he is, that he doesn't need to seriously practice the speech. He needs to kind of practice it, and he can, like, fuck around and make Roman jokes while he's pretend practicing, and I think it did well to show us how full of himself Roman was in that moment, just to kind of juxtapose that with where he ends up at the end of the episode. But, you know, I really liked how he ended it with this part, when he's practicing his speech, with this part about how Logan's death was broadcast all around the world via avenues that he helped create. I thought that was a really dope ending. He presented it really dopely, and when he said it, I was kind of like, oh, that's gonna be a nice way to end the speech at the funeral. I should have known better than to think that was ever even going to happen. But as all the kids, minus Connor, are in the car heading to the funeral, I was given an instant reminder of just how strange these people are. The last time they were together, the end of the last episode, Kendall was calling Shiv a piece of dirt, and dirt was definitely not the word he wanted to use, for betraying them. And Shiv was telling Mattson how they're going to fuck over Kendall and Roman. But in this scene, this car scene where they're heading to the funeral, they're still siblings heading to their father's funeral. Like, they fuck with each other for a bit, but then Kendall shares that Rava took the kids upstate. I'll be talking about that a little bit later. And Roman says that's dumb and shitty, which it isn't, but he's supporting his brother. And Shiv says she's sorry that happened to him. And then Shiv shares that she's pregnant. And yes, Roman he's still peak Roman right now. So this, even though on the surface, everything that happens here is bad, when you know the characters like we know the characters, this is Roman being the brother that Roman would be. So he makes like a low-key fat joke. He asks if it's his baby. He talks about jerking off to her breastfeeding. And everybody's kind of just like, not everybody, there's no everybody. But I mean, I think anyone who is not intimately familiar with the Roman character or with this show would look at that as like, oh God, how can he say these sorts of things? But like for me, I took that as like, he's in his comfort zone right now. He's confident, he's happy, he feels like he's won, he's on top of the world. And when Roman is on top of the world, that's how he shows it. And so like to me, that felt like siblings being siblings in the car. Kendall shared some pain. He got some sympathy and empathy from his siblings. Shiv shared her pregnancy. She got the typical, I mean, again, it's not congratulations, oh, I love you, I'm so happy. But like she got the brotherly response from Roman that he would give, showing, given that he's in a good mood. So, I'm just like, man, at the end of the last episode, Kendall was about to tell Shiv he'll see her next Tuesday, if you catch my drift. And now here they are consoling each other like siblings who love one another. And we arrive at the funeral, we being the audience and the kids, and pretty much everyone who mattered at the show at some point is at this funeral. I don't think I saw Stewie, but other than that, I feel like I saw everybody. Minkin and Mattson are both there. So there are, of course, plans to make sure that Minkin's going to kill the deal, but also plans to try to convince him not to. Shiv's plan to convince him not to is to have Lucas propose to him the option of an American CEO, which, of course, would be her. Lucas points out a couple reasons folks might think she's not really good for it, which one of those reasons includes her pregnancy. And Shiv, being the truly disgusting person she is, but that her fans seem to kind of want to pretend that she's not, she basically says she doesn't even intend on parenting the kid anyway, so fuck it. And she later makes the same statement to her mother, which, if you recall, and I'm not 100% sure, but I'm fairly certain, there was a conversation between the two of them, Shiv and her mother, earlier in the show's run, where the mom basically said something like, I wasn't cut out to be a mom and neither are you. So for her to have this approach, to be like, oh, if people think I can't be CEO or whatever because I'm pregnant, well, I'm not going to be a mom anyway, so fuck it. I'm going to be a shit parent anyway. And then Tom told her the same thing a couple episodes back about not being fit to be a mother. And she's leaning into it now, telling everyone with ears in this episode that she has no intention of raising this kid. And I just don't understand how Shiv has fans. I really don't. I don't understand how any of these people have fans. But then she also agrees to introduce him to Mencken, who we know that she hates. But when you're evil and petty and the goal is to beat your brothers, you care about that goal so much that you don't intend on being a mother to your child. I guess throwing away your political ideals is pretty easy by comparison if you're willing to stoop to the, I won't even mother my child. If you're willing to stoop that low to like beat your brothers, then what the fuck do your political ideals mean to you? But Carrie arrives at the funeral, and there's a really good scene here where Logan's women are kind of all together. Caroline, who is the Roy's kid's mom, except for Connor, gathers up all the women and has them kind of sitting together. And she tells Marcia, this woman named Sally Ann, who I believe we're just meeting for the first time in this episode, was her Carrie. And it's awkward, of course, but when Carrie breaks down at the funeral, I thought it was a nice scene, a nice moment, I should say, to see Marcia quietly console her, because it was very much like a feeling of like, I should hate you right now, but we're sharing the same pain in this moment. And I thought that was kind of nice for Marcia to do that for her. And Carrie seemed to like make a face of acknowledgement, like, I appreciate this. And then we start the speeches. And the speeches take up a large chunk of the episode, but they won't take up a large chunk of this review. I just really want to talk about how each speech, I think, was very much uniquely that person. Ewan's speech was incredible, telling stories that I think present a unique side of Logan, like the guilt that he lived with over feeling like he brought home the polio that killed his sister, and then having his aunt and uncle like allow him to like believe that and to lean into it. Like the story of them being told they couldn't move for 3 days and 2 nights. It's just these terrible stories of like a really sad upbringing that can help to form the man that Ewan readily admits was terrible. And he talked about the terrible things that Logan wrought on the world. And I love how when he finally finishes, he sits down and Greg's like, that was a good hard take. Side note on this moment though, I didn't like that they gave Greg such a hard time. What the fuck was he supposed to do to stop Ewan from talking? And then I love how the first thing Ewan said when he got up there is how they tried to stop Logan's brother from speaking at his funeral because of a share price. Like, that was such a one mic energy kind of thing to do, and I absolutely loved it. He stood up in front of a room of people and basically just pointed out how horrifically terrible people they are and why, and I love that. I love that so much. And so then it's Roman's turn to talk, and I said each speech was definitively that person. And how many times have we seen Roman kind of revert back into this childlike state when it comes to his father? He gets up there and we see none of the swag and bravado from the opening scene. We see a hurt and broken child who breaks down, and when you couple that with the episode with him and Kendall and Mattson on top of that mountain, I bet you that broken child just clinched his first Emmy. I bet you, because fucking Kieran Culkin, man, crushed this fucking scene. But in true Roman fashion, as Kendall will later tell him, he fucked it. But again, I can't speak highly enough, I think, for regarding Kieran Culkin's performance. Not just in this scene, not just in the other episode I'm talking about, not even really just in this season. His performance across these 4 seasons has been remarkable. He's had a lot to compete with, being on the screen with Brian Cox, dealing with Jeremy Strong and his method acting and how he crushes this show. But I think this is going to be Kieran Culkin's year. I think Kieran Culkin's, I think he earned his Emmy with this one. So, man, really great stuff. Really great stuff. But since Roman can't continue, Kendall steps up and does what Kendall does. He steps up. His speech is very, yes, Logan was terrible, but here is what all he accomplished because of just a little bit of terribleness. Like, he talks about how Logan was never afraid to act, but everyone else has thousands of reasons not to act. I love that line. Happens all the time. You see it in real life all the time. He says Logan made life happen. I love that line. He says he hopes he has Logan's force within him. I loved that line. Like, Kendall's speech was so good that I'm pretty sure after it was over, they cut to Ewan and he's sitting there kind of looking ashamed for slandering Logan. Like, that's how good Kendall's speech was. But the admiration from Kendall, the admiration of all the things that generally made Logan a bad guy and caused Logan to treat him terribly, these are ironically the things that Kendall admires about him. Pure Kendall, that speech. Admiring all of the things that caused Logan to treat you like shit. And we all agree, he treated Kendall the worst of the 4 of them. And Kendall got up there and basically said, these are all the reasons that made him great. The reasons that made him treat me like shit. And I hope I have that too. Like, pure Kendall, baby. Pure Kendall. So Shiv speaks last. And I love how she talked about how Logan left you outside in the cold, but that made it so much more rewarding when he let you in. It's so Shiv, like focusing on those small moments where he could make you feel like you were worth a damn. Like, she says he left you outside. I said left you outside in the cold. She doesn't say cold, I don't believe, but she says he left you outside. But when she talks about him letting you in, she describes the warmth of it. And I just thought that was a really poetic way of describing her relationship with him. It's like she's willing to overlook the 95% of the cold because the 5% warm is just so fulfilling. And that's, to me, that's really sad. Like, this guy, again, terrible. She says, like, he's extra hard on women. Like, everyone up here agreed he's a piece of shit. And she's sitting here like, their whole, before I even started talking, like, oh, we have to present the other side. And do you? Like, I mean, I get it. He's your father. Of course you want to go up there and present the positive aspects, put a nice spin on it. He's dead. Like, why get up there and shit on him? But, like, the only way they can do that is to be like, that 5% was so warm. And it just compensated for the 95% of the time he treated me like a piece of shit. Like, I don't know. I think that's sad. But again, funeral scenes, all great. Moving on to the political / business stuff. Kendall learns of Shiv's American CEO plan. And I think that when you combine that with the weight of the funeral, Rava and his kids leaving, and Roman fucking the deal, Kendall does what I so often find myself doing, saying, fuck this, I'm going to take control of the situation my fucking self. He recruits Hugo and Colin, and he recruits Hugo specifically with a great speech about how the people who you love can also fuck you, and he plans to fuck the deal. He says, me rule the world, and the Hugo can come, but he's not going to be a collaborator. He's going to be his dog. He's going to get the scraps, but the scraps will be millions. Are you in? And Hugo, in pure Hugo form, goes, woof, woof. Hugo is... I'm not... you guys understand Hugo. He's just a spineless fucking, like, yeah, I'll do anything for any kind of recognition, or... Like, he's a guy with no pride, with no spine. He's willing to stoop and be demeaned and degraded to just be next to a guy like Kendall. It's disgusting, but it's funny for this show. And then there's an interesting scene where everyone kind of like approaches Mencken and tries to get a little FaceTime with him. And Greg wants him to know that him and Tom were behind ATN calling the election for him. Roman comes up and in an attempt to interrupt Greg and get him away. Roman gets shamed by Mencken, calls him the Grim Weeper. And I'm just like, man, you gotta be a real piece of shit to shame a guy for crying at his dad's funeral. And you can hear Kendall briefly check him on it. And earlier in the episode, Kendall asked Roman to tell Mencken to chill. And I wonder if at some point in the finale, if Kendall's gonna snap on him and in defense of his brother or something. Because there were 2 moments in this episode where I got the vibe that Kendall was like, if he get out of pocket, I'm gonna check him. and like, he checked him under his breath when he said Grim Weeper. And I'm just curious if that's gonna escalate even farther. In a way where Kendall is not going to be able to recover. So Lucas and Shiv pitched the American CEO idea to Mencken, and he seems receptive. Near the end of the episode, Maxon tells Shiv it's a yes, and he believes that Mencken has agreed to this proposal. But if you think that Shiv is going to be the American CEO, you ain't been paying attention, baby. He'll probably do the American CEO, but it ain't gonna be her. If you've been watching this thinking that Shiv's gonna come out on top, you've been watching a different show than the one I've been watching. But I'll get to my prediction at the end. The episode ends with Kendall's final recruitment, Roman. And among telling Roman multiple times how he fucked everything up, Kendall tells him that they gotta fight Shiv at the board, which will obviously be, I think, the culmination of the show and the season in the finale. And I know it's mean, but the way Kendall kept telling him that he fucked everything up, but made it sound like it wasn't that big of a deal and that they'd be okay, was hilarious to me. Like, even after he laid out everything, his final words before the scene cut were, "You fucked it, but it's all right." Just it's like a. Have you ever seen like a thing where like somebody's like having a rant and they're screaming and they're yelling and they leave the room and the people are like, wow, and the person comes back into the room and resumes the rant? That's kind of what that felt like, just like on a smaller scale of him just saying, you fucked it, you fucked it, you fucked it. It's like, okay, finally he's done with his little speech. He's about to get up and leave. He's already laid everything out. It's like he turns around and be like, you fucked it, just so you remember, but it's all right. And Roman ends up storming out. He's crying. He runs out into these protests, which I'm going to get to in this final section. And for a split second, I wondered if he was going to get himself killed, but I dismissed it immediately because it felt like a cheap move that's beneath this show. Like, this isn't the type of show that goes for, like, big deaths. So Roman dying there didn't feel right to me, so I immediately dismissed it. But that's how it ended. And yeah, Roman just out there in the protest, wallowing in his own sadness. I have no idea how this is gonna end for Roman. I really don't. But we'll talk about that in my thought section. So closing out with the social unrest piece and then my thoughts. The social unrest plotline has been interesting to me because I've been very intrigued with how far they're willing to go with comparing it to real life, especially since a lot of these events they're commenting on didn't happen that long ago. Like very early in the episode, it felt like they were gonna go really hard for a January 6th sort of thing. And I was wondering, one, how closely they'd mirror that, but then two, if they did do it, how would the public at large take it? Like, would they think it was too soon? Would they be mad? Would they look at it as poignant commentary? Kind of depending on what they were gonna do. And we actually opened the episode with this plot line. Sorry, as Tom discusses the unrest as a result of the whole situation with ATN essentially calling the calling the election for Macon despite the uncounted Milwaukee votes. And Jimenez supporters can see the scam just right there in front of them, and they're in the streets and they're ready to turn up. And Kendall gets a call from Rava, and she essentially says, you know, you told me I didn't have anything to worry about with Macon getting elected. There's still very clearly a great deal to worry about and rumors of a disturbance. So I'm going to take myself and our kids upstate and peace. We'll holler at you. And now, if you recall, I said in the previous video that Kendall keeps saying everything he does it for his family, when very clearly it's the opposite. Everything he does is for himself. And this often comes at the expense of his marriage and his performance as a father. Well, those chickens come to roost in this episode, baby, because Kendall hightails it over to Rava and has a complete and total fucking temper tantrum over her leaving. He wants them at the funeral. He says this isn't the day to fuck with him, which to a degree is understandable, but he's still solely focused on self. He's gonna sit there and he's gonna pretend like even on his way over there to get in Rava's face, he didn't see businesses getting boarded up. He saw that shit. He knows what the fuck's going on. But he's only focused on himself. He's downplaying the severity of the situation to get his family to stay for selfish reasons, but also because I think he doesn't want to face the reality of what he's done. He's seen the buildings getting boarded up, but if he accepts that he has to accept his role in helping to get Macon elected. I don't think he wants to do that. And then he starts acting like a child, of course. You're doing this to hurt me. I'm going to lay down in front of the car so you can't leave. I'm going to sue for custody. And you know something, silly me? I thought he was just fucking with her. But nope, I was wrong. Kendall is very much not just talking shit. And he very much does intend to sue for custody. So when he actually has Jess start looking into lawyers, I'm just like, man, Kendall is being a real petty bitch right now. And yes, I'll be talking about the scene with Jess in a moment, but I'm saving it for the thought section since it doesn't really fit in here. And I didn't think this through when I was writing it out, but it's time for the thought section. So I guess I could have just talked about Jess. But I said I talked about this Jess and Kendall scene, so might as well do it now. And there are a couple of things I want to point out. I like how she very clearly had no intention of telling him she wanted to quit on that day and had thrown it on his calendar for a later date. And he normally wouldn't have even seen it on that day if it weren't for the fact that he was looking for a date to talk with a lawyer over the Rava shit. But he sees it, he makes her talk about it, he gets mad about it, he berates her, and then he blames her for the bad timing of telling him about it. Pure Kendall. Then also, I like when he directly asked her if it was over the Macon shit. And she's like, well, I've been thinking about it for a while, which sounds like no, but read to me like I was already going to quit, but the Macon shit was the final straw. Like, that's what that kind of read to me like. And y'all know I like when they don't say the important shit and they kind of leave it to be read in between the lines. So I dug that. And maybe I'm reading too much into it and it wasn't that, but that's how I took it. I desperately wanted to hear Connor's eulogy after Shiv said it could bring legal action toward them. I was like, what the fuck kind of eulogy is this? Thought that was great. Disappointed we didn't get to hear it. And it didn't fit in within the major part of this review, but I really love the convo between Tom and Shiv at the end of the episode where Tom breaks down after rationalizing not being at the funeral because he already said goodbye. And then Shiv's just like, you're so tired, just go to the apartment and rest. I thought that was a really nice moment for them too. And then now the very last thing I want to talk about is my prediction for the finale. I'd love to hear you guys' predictions, so if you got something, drop it in the comments. But this is my thought. This whole time, I feel like they've kind of been building up to something with Greg. And if you look at Greg, this is the guy that started off throwing up in a fucking suit at the amusement park, not in a good suit, in a character suit, like a costume. Throwing up in a suit in episode 1, to now he's a pallbearer at Logan's funeral. This is an unmatched come up, right? And I don't think necessarily that this show is trying to give me some surprise shock ending where it's like, now Greg is the king of Waystar Royco. I don't think that's the case. But what I do think is the case is that Greg is going to in this show in a significantly better position than I think anyone expected him to be, even now, and definitely, when the show started. So what I'm thinking, here's my prediction. My prediction is that this board meeting that they're talking about is going to come down to some form of vote. Something's going to happen to Ewan. Ewan's not going to show up. Ewan's going to die. Ewan's going to say, I don't even give a fuck about this, so I don't even want to be involved. Whatever the case may be, Ewan's going to back out. Greg, his grandson, is going to replace him with the vote. Greg is somehow going to be the deciding vote in... Well, at first, let me get to what even the deciding vote is. I think that the Milwaukee votes are going to get counted somehow, or they're going to re-vote, whatever the case may be. I think that Jimenez is going to end up being president. So the idea of Mencken fucking with the deal is going to be off the table. The deal is going to go through unless the board votes it down. And then now we're going to get to this point where Greg is going to be the deciding vote. And everybody he's interacted with is going to be in that room and is going to be looking at it, be like kind of like taking an appraisal of their interactions with Greg and how that might influence the decision that he's going to make. Because we've seen him talking with Marcia. We know doesn't Marcia have 2 votes, Logan and hers? We've seen him talking with Marcia. We already know his interactions with the siblings. I wouldn't be surprised if Lucas is also in this board meeting. Like, there's so many people, Tom, that Greg has had interactions with, and I feel like Greg is going to be the deciding vote. Greg is probably going to cast a vote for the sale to Matsson to go through, and then who's going to be that American CEO? You guessed it, Gregory fucking Hirsch. I will see you guys next week for the finale, and until then, peace.